This video is sponsored by nobody, just myself. I dropped a brand new Winter Wonderland wallpaper pack of the beautiful shots that I took of the mountains in Banff, Alberta, Canada. So if that's your cup of tea and you want some nice wallpapers on your phone, there'll be a link in the description down below for you guys to check them out and support the channel. But anyways, let's go ahead and dive right into the video. If you're feeling on the fence or feeling very anxious about buying the new M2 Pro MacBook Pro, this video is going to be teaching you everything that you need to know about my experience living with this laptop for the last little while and whether or not it might be worth the money for you. Starting off with the design, the M2 Pro MacBook Pro is precisely the same as the M1 Pro version from late 2021, which is not really a bad thing at all. The design was close to perfect then, and it's still close to perfect now. It's a boxy rectangular shape with all the ports you need, including Thunderbolt ports, an SD card reader, a headphone jack, and HDMI 2.1, which is actually really useful for anybody that has high refresh rate displays. I should make it very clear on this video that HDMI 2.1 was not available on the older MacBook Pro. My absolute favorite port, however, from my experience has to be MagSafe. I love charging this laptop that way as it opens up an extra Thunderbolt port, but also because of the safety it provides in case someone trips on my wire. The laptop is relatively light as well. It only comes in at around 3.5 pounds, and that's actually one of its biggest strengths. You're getting a powerhouse of a laptop at a very light size. Yeah, I mean, it's no MacBook Air in terms of weight, but it's definitely light enough to the point where I don't think twice about it. And also, I think I've grown to be more fond of the silver color over space gray. I just think it pops nicer in light, so I'd recommend getting silver if you're debating between the two colors. The inside of the laptop does boast the same two-toned black keyboard design, which looks fantastic as always, and that 14-inch liquid retina display is just something to marvel at, and we'll talk more about that display later on in the video. But in terms of that actual 14-inch size, I think it's really clutch. I think you're getting a really compact laptop that isn't, heavy. It's pretty lightweight. It just throws right into your bag, and you get that added benefit of mobility and portability when you're on the go. And if you really do need a larger display, you can always plug it into an external display, and that sort of solves your display problems. If you are thinking about getting the 16-inch model, I would probably ask yourself if you are working within apps that would benefit from a larger display. And also the fact that will you even be connecting to a display often? If you find that you're always going to be on the go, you're really never going to get the opportunity to plug into an external monitor, maybe the 16-inch display might work for you. And I will admit, even for my own creative workflow, the apps that I work with, if I'm on the go, I would actually benefit from a bigger screen because I could use all the screen I can get to make my editing a lot easier. But I actually value portability over a larger screen when I have my laptop out and about. I can't speak. When I have my laptop out and about. And speaking of the display, it truly is the best in the business. Like, it still is as great and as perfect as it was from 2021 as it is now in 2023. It's a liquid retina XDR display with just incredible dynamic range and color that will leave you just in awe with how good something can look on the screen. Movies, pictures, and any content or media you consume on this computer is just going to impress you all the time. The most impressive part though about this display is the fact that it's mini LED, so it does get genuinely black when you're looking at content, and also provides excellent contrast, but it also has a high refresh rate of 120 Hertz. So whenever you're doing any work on this computer, the scrolling speed and smoothness of apps are just at the highest level, so it makes it really hard to go back to a regular laptop with a regular old 60 Hertz panel. Like, I can't do that anymore. For those of you curious about how the display fares in direct sunlight outside, it's passable in harsh light. It definitely isn't easy to see, but it gets the job done if you really have to work in those conditions. I would definitely say though, under shade on a sunny day, this laptop is more than usable, and those are kind of the conditions I would find myself working in if I had to. As for the infamous notch on this laptop, I've never had a problem with it in 2021 with my older MacBook Pro, and I still don't have a problem with it in 2023. The only gripe I really have with the notch is that I wish that Apple would find a way to just stick Face ID in there, because I think that would just be awesome to have in MacBook Pros. But I imagine that because of how thin the actual display chassis is on this MacBook, it probably is an engineering nightmare to figure out how to do that. As for the webcam, it is 1080p and it does rest on the notch of this display. And in broad daylight in settings like this, I think it's actually quite passable. And you're also listening to the studio mic array that they did build into this laptop as well. In a much darker low lit setting like this one, you can be the judge for yourself whether or not this is passable for you. I think it's perfectly fine for me. Like, I'm not too concerned with how somebody looks on FaceTime or on Zoom calls, but if you do want the absolute best quality, I'm not sure that this really does it for nighttime low light webcam footage. Outside of that, do I wish that webcams were better on MacBook Pros? Of course. Like, I would love if Apple would put a 4K webcam that just looked awesome across the board and wowed people on Zoom calls and FaceTime calls, but that's just not the reality today. So if you do want the best webcam quality, my recommendation is probably the Insta360 Link. It's a 4K AI webcam. Or if you do have an iPhone laying around, you actually can use that as a webcam with your MacBook, and that gives you some pretty impressive quality as well. As for the speakers on this MacBook, it is still the best in the game. It's a 6-speaker sound system with force-canceling woofers and supports Dolby Atmos and spatial audio, and it actually works. Like, when you're watching Dolby Atmos enabled content on Netflix, I do hear the left and right channels, I do hear the sound separation, but you know, it's not a home theater. Like, it doesn't come close to like a real home theater setup. So you do want to sort of tamper your expectations a little bit. But for something on the go, it's pretty impressive with how loud and clear and how good it separates the sound. It's like kind of a mini home theater on the go. Another great addition to this laptop is Wi-Fi 6E. Like, thank you so much. Finally, it's here in the MacBook Pros. It wasn't there in 2021, but it's here now in 2023. And you do need to have a Wi-Fi 6E router to take advantage of this inside of your home. But if you do, like me, because I have that in my house, you just get this insane wireless speeds for your laptop. It's awesome. Like, you don't need Ethernet. It's almost like a thing of the past to have Ethernet when you have Wi-Fi 6E. So, you know, upgrade to Wi-Fi 6E if you have the ability to do so. All right, now let's talk about performance. That's probably the biggest reason you're considering a MacBook Pro, is whether or not it's going to meet your demands as a computer. And if this is your first rodeo of looking at M series MacBooks, I would understand that this is a concern for you, but if you've been following Apple and what they've been doing with these M chips for the last few years, you probably know just as well as I do that it's probably universally accepted at this point that if you buy an M series MacBook computer and you spec it out right, you can pretty much do anything your heart's content wants. Anything your heart desires, you can accomplish it on that computer. It's a pretty amazing thing to say about something that Apple has created. On the very low end, if you're just doing very light computing and using the internet, this laptop obviously has you covered. If you're doing creative work within video editing or photo editing, this laptop has you covered. If you want to do coding, music production, like literally whatever you want to do on a computer, you could probably do it on a MacBook Pro, contingent, and I want to stress this very much, contingent that you purchase the right SKU, the right configuration. For example, I bought a base model 2021 MacBook Pro with 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of SSD storage, and an M1 Pro chip, and that worked great, and it exceeded my expectations initially as a computer for creative work. But as my skills and demands grew over time for that computer, it never was able to match up to how I developed myself, and that specific SKU of a computer is kind of a pain to use today. Fast forward, Apple sent me this M2 Pro MacBook Pro SKU that I'm reviewing, and that has 32 gigs of RAM, 2 terabytes of SSD, and a fully maxed out M2 Pro chip with 12-core CPU and a 19-core GPU. And let me tell you, man, I could definitely feel and see the difference of that computer, and it is just like a breeze to use. It is fun to use. It's a beast. And honestly, it just really made me think even worse about the fact that I made the wrong purchase The first time I didn't get the right upgrades for my computer for it to last me the amount of time that I needed it to, because I didn't really anticipate that my needs were going to go up by that much, and my laptop was only able to really give me this much. If you have any needs requiring you to multitask across various programs at once, I'm going to caution you really hard to really consider getting 32 gigs or 64 gigs of RAM over the initial 16 that it comes with at the base model. I just think getting more RAM is a good idea for everybody. Like, I learned that the hard way. My current MacBook Pro is at 16 gigs of RAM, and I could really use 32 right now, 2 years later, and I can't do anything about it. Like, I grew as a person, my skills grew, my demands grew, and now I'm stuck with a laptop that wasn't really able to grow with me. So definitely consider 32 or 64 gigs to get more longevity out of your computer. As for the amount of SSD storage you should get on your laptop, it ultimately depends on your needs at the end of the day. For me personally, I was always a high storage need user. I needed a lot of storage, but I really challenged myself to try to make 512 gigabytes work on my older MacBook Pro, and let me tell you, that did not work. I always was maxing that storage out, and I just completely regretted not getting at least a terabyte or 2 terabytes of storage. So if you know you're going to have high storage needs, just bite the bullet. Get extra storage on your MacBook Pro. You're gonna thank yourself in the long run over the next few years. As for the chip in your computer, should you go with the base M2 Pro at the 10 core and 16 core CPU and GPU combo? Should you max out and get the 12 core and 19 core CPU, GPU? Or should you just jump ship and get the M2 Max chip? I would say for about 90% of you guys watching this video, you will be just sufficient getting the M2 Pro model. Not a lot of you guys are really going to benefit from the M2 Max because they're essentially the same CPU. The only difference is that the GPU cores are larger on the M2 Max, so you would really need to have a graphically intensive workflow for that to be worth it, and you would know if that's you already, and you wouldn't really be debating that. So for all of us that are now settled on this M2 Pro chip, should you upgrade it? Like, should you just get the base chip, or should you pay for more CPU or GPU cores? And I would say that for like 99% of you guys watching, you don't really have to. Like, if you're on a tight budget, which I imagine a lot of us are, it's a tough economy, it's okay, I would say that you shouldn't like upgrade the chip at all. Your money is better spent getting more RAM or getting more storage, because that actually gives you more long-term value in the future. I want to make this very clear. My 2021 MacBook Pro, the problem I had with it was not the M1 Pro chip. That chip is a beast in 2021, and it is still a beast in 2023, like 2 years later. The problem I had was that I didn't have enough RAM and I didn't have enough storage. And I wish I, made the right purchase the first time. So, again, if you're on a tight budget, don't upgrade the chip. Put your money towards more RAM or more storage, depending on your needs. I do want to make a comment about battery life on this laptop. I just want to say, like, Apple did an amazing job. Like, I never have to think about charging this laptop. I just sort of use it when I'm on the go, and it's just been perfectly fine. And that's sort of the dream when it comes to laptop use. You don't want to feel like your computer is always going to die. And I've never had that feeling when I use this computer. It's easily like a 2 to 3 day laptop on light use, like web browsing, using Microsoft Office, email, that kind of stuff. But if you are doing really heavy workloads, of course, you can kill this in 1 day, but it would definitely survive enough time between the times I'm away from an outlet until I get to an outlet. Like, I could probably video edit straight with this laptop for about maybe 4 to 5 hours, maybe even 6 before it dies. I'm not gonna be away from an outlet or a power bank for that period of time. So this laptop definitely does get the job done. By far though, probably the most impressive thing about this computer that doesn't really get talked about enough is how power efficient it is. It is using such a low amount of wattage to power so much of the stuff that you are accomplishing on this computer, and it virtually never really gets that hot either. Like, the fans are almost dead silent all the time. I think I only ever heard the fans go off once in my entire use of this computer, and it was maybe for like a couple minutes. Outside of that, it's been dead silent whenever I'm working like really heavy workloads. So, I mean, Apple is just very impressive, the engineering that they put into this computer and all the cooling that they've put into there. Overall, I'm gonna say this. My 2021 MacBook Pro experience was almost perfect. And now my 2023 MacBook Pro experience is even closer to perfect than it ever has been before. Like, there just isn't a bad bone in this computer's body. Like, yes, I wish there was Face ID in this computer. Yes, I do wish the webcams looked a bit nicer, or maybe even 4K. Yes, I would love if Apple allowed us to upgrade the RAM or upgrade the SSD over time if our needs or demands changed. But ultimately, what Apple has presented with us today is a really good package that makes those little short downfalls easy to forget. And I would just highly recommend, if you are thinking about buying a MacBook Pro, just go out and do it. If you really do need one, you're not gonna regret it. Just make sure that you get the right SKU. Make sure you get the right amount of RAM and storage that works for you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to comment down below, #IMadeIt. If you finished the video, I'm gonna heart your comment. You're goated. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. And check out my latest video right here. But I'll talk to all of you guys in the next one. Peace.